if her high school has a gay-straight alliance, then obviously my high school should have a gay-straight alliance. Truly not a beat of self-doubt, questioning, fear. I put this plan into action. I print out posters, glee, everywhere. Every celebrity that I could think of that was an ally to the LGBT community was on these posters everywhere all over the school. The whole time being like, I'm straight, I'm an ally. I did so well that we won an award for the club. Truly, also at no point did anybody be like, hey, bestie, you seem really passionate about this whole gay-straight alliance thing. Is there anything you want to tell us? Hello, and welcome to the Out and Bloom podcast. I'm your host, Eva Bloom. I'm a non-binary, queer, late bloomer coach and queer and trans sex educator. I use my degree in social psychology to help late bloomers find queer joy, community, have a great time dating queer sex, and I'm so excited to bring you this podcast today. When I'm not supporting late bloomers, you can find me reading sci-fi and fantasy queer books, starting a new craft project, or playing board games with friends. The Out and Bloom podcast is all about sharing the social psychology you need to help make sense of your journey, as well as a little bit of my own personal storytelling to help you feel less alone and supported in the chaos of it all. You might have noticed that things are bad out here for queer and trans people. There are a lot of politicians who are really committed to making our lives more difficult. So I really hope that this is not only a podcast that is educational, but also a landing space for you to come back to every week and get a little bit of queer joy and affirmation in your life. There will be new episodes every week wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube for video versions. Hello, all you wonderful people watching on video. An extra big kiss for you. Check out for upcoming episodes talking about queer community, comp het, second adolescence, queer fashion, and everything in between. If you want more late bloomer community and conversations, please come and join the Late Bloomer Support Club over on Patreon at patreon.com/late bloomer support club, where we meet monthly on a different topic around late bloomer identity and journey, as well as we have a gorgeous Discord open 24/7 where folks are sharing all of their experiences, tips, book recs, all of that good stuff. So now that you know a little bit about what's to expect coming up on the Out and Bloom podcast, I wanted to start the first ever episode by sharing a little bit about my journey because, as with many of you, it has been a wild ride to coming into my late bloomer queer identity, figuring out who I am, and building a really beautiful queer life for myself. So to kick it off, let's start off in high school. My queer journey in high school starts with me founding my high school's gay-straight alliance as a super strong straight ally. Yes, that did happen. So it begins at summer camp. I was having a conversation with my fellow camp member, and she tells me that her high school has a gay-straight alliance. That's what it was called back in 2011, 2012. She goes to an arts high school in the city. And I said, well, if her high school has a gay-straight alliance, then obviously my high school should have a gay-straight alliance. And truly not a beat of self-doubt, questioning, fear, I put this plan into action. I print out posters of, I don't know if any of you remember the Josh Hutcherson, straight ally campaign that he did in the 2010s. Posters everywhere. Glee everywhere. Every celebrity that I could think of that was an ally to the LGBT community was on these posters everywhere all over the school. I really had no fear in a way that I am very proud of and amazed at. I was amazed. I'm like, why aren't the maybe gay staff members not just jumping on board with me to want to lead this club? But yeah, something inside me the whole time being like, I'm straight, I'm an ally. I was like, I'm gonna do this. And I did so well that we won an award for the club. But yeah, truly also at no point did anybody be like, hey, bestie, you seem really passionate about this whole gay-straight alliance thing. Is there anything you want to tell us? Nobody did that, which was probably really respectful of them in my journey and my pace and what I knew about myself. But sometimes I'm like, that would have been nice. That would have been nice if somebody had been like, hey, I think maybe you're also queer. But even throughout that whole process of starting the Gay Straight Alliance, I also ended up going to a queer prom in high school. And I remember vividly, I love to dance, a huge form of my self-expression. I'm on the dance floor, queer prom, and they were giving out superlatives or awards. I was like, I wish I could win the best dancer at this queer prom award, but I can't because I'm straight. One thing that also sticks out about founding the Gay Straight Alliance experience that I feel like is maybe one of my strongest comp het memories from high school is that there was a person in the club who was dating a girl from another school. And from what they had told me or what I remember, it seemed like they were kind of mostly dating because they were two of the only out queer girls that each other knew. And that was kind of why. And they were like, oh, such a bummer that there aren't more queer girls out because I'm not super into this person. And my little, not even closeted brain, just truly head empty, no idea, no thought. I was like, well, that's kind of messed up because this girl from another school is really pretty and really hot and really cool. And I would date her. They should break up so that we can date. But I didn't think I was queer. I literally just could not put the pieces together until later. And don't worry, things only get gayer from there with me having absolutely not a single thought in my head that this was queer behavior. So if you also were like, I was never closeted, I never knew and was hiding it, I just really was given no script for a positive framework for what it could be like to be a queer girl growing up. So I just was like, couldn't be me. That's not the box I'm fitting into. You are not alone, because that was my experience too. From there, we moved to university, to my first degree, my undergrad. I also did not come out in university, which sometimes makes me sad because like many late bloomers, you feel sad for maybe not having certain experiences, and it would have been very cool, I think, to date at university when there's such a high concentration of people. I instead, had a nice little hookup phase with men at university, which taught me a lot, but would have preferred. But again, I'm literally here as a late bloomer, and that has been my journey, so I'm grateful for that as well. There did start to be some more gay happenings at university. A couple of my really close friends came out to me as queer or bi, and that was a big part of planting the seed of oh, queerness is something that is feeling very close in my life and to the people around me, and I'm watching people I'm very close to kind of live this, and it feeling like a bit more of a possibility for me. I also started getting more involved in the sex positive community, learning about sex research. I became deeply obsessed with the podcast The Dildorks, which is still going on and going strong today, which is a sexuality podcast that is hosted by two bi folks. And I was listening, religiously every week and wow, okay, all these cool bisexuals around me. So interesting. I'm feeling drawn to them. I wonder what it is about that. that we'll find out later. It all makes sense. But another part of the reason that I did not have any gay awakenings, gay explorations at university was because I was in a long-term relationship with a cis man. Woo! Yeah, I was in a long-term relationship with a cis man, but we broke up the summer before my last year of university. And even though, like I said, we did a straight hookup phase, I also started to change my dating apps on my profiles to include women and non-binary people. I think I went on one date that I couldn't admit to myself was a date, but we had fully matched on the app and went out to do something, which is a date. So I don't know what I was thinking. I also went over to have a cuddle date with my friend during this time, where we literally went over to her house to cuddle. That's it. We smoked weed and we cuddled. Baby girl, it was your opportunity to kiss your hot friend. And I wish at that time that I had maybe had some out queer roommates or who maybe had some sense of what was going on to be like, hey, I'm like going to like cuddle with my friend. I'm really nervous. And for them to, again, a possibility for somebody to be like, this is gay behavior. But alas, nobody did. But I did at this time have sex with a woman for the first time, which was my roommate, which feels very quintessential queer experience, and I will tell you how it happened. It is incredibly embarrassing, so I hope that you enjoy this wild story. It starts with me learning about platonic kink from the Dildworks podcast, that kink doesn't necessarily need to be sexual. You can engage in rope and shibari as a way of finding release or exploring different sensations. It doesn't need to have a sexual component. And my little closeted brain said, okay, the obvious next step, what to do with this information, is to ask my roommates if they want to platonically spank me in the kitchen of our student house. And they're very sweet and they all say yes. And then later we host a house party and I end up texting one of my roommates saying, hey, would you want to not platonically spank me sometime? And she says yes. And so we sneak out from this party to go to her room, which is in the attic of our student house, and we proceed to have gay sex. And at the end, we look at our phones and they're like blowing up from all these texts from our friends being like, where are you? But yeah, that was the first time I had sex with a woman. And part of me was like, okay, despite the fact that I initiated sex with a woman, that I desired this, I was like, this is something I want and am into. I was like, I don't know if I'm queer though, because it didn't like blow me away. I didn't have a mind-blowing, like transformative experience that I would have if I was queer. Which, if this has ever happened to you, like there's so many factors that go into how you experience the sexual experience. And for me, it felt really similar to like the casual experiences I had with men. It was fun, it was like hot, it was playful. It didn't transform me. I didn't wake up like, in a way that I thought I was going to. But the fact that I initiate sex with a woman, that's the gay part. And also that I still had a fun time and was ready the next day to be like, okay, let's do it again. And she, of course, comes into my room and immediately talks about how she's getting back together with her ex-boyfriend. Which is all for the best, because it probably would have been very messy to keep doing that. But that is the story of the first time I had sex with a woman. Moving into my master's degree, when we're finally getting it together, we're putting the pieces together, we're realizing I'm doing gay stuff and it's gay soon. I did my master's focusing on sexuality. I did my thesis on sexting. So I very much, at the same time that I was getting in all these spaces, meeting all these queer people, was also really grappling with the stereotype that, oh, like women in their 20s are just like sexually explorative, the college try. I'm being surrounded by all the sex positivity. Maybe I'm just like caught up in this and it's not like a real thing, a deep thing that is authentic and like meaningful about myself. I really allowed myself to absorb some of those messages at that time. But as I was doing all that, I met a wonderful girl through sex blogger Twitter, because I had started my YouTube channel, which you are on, and you can go back and you can watch all the baby videos. But I started my YouTube channel, so that's how I was kind of in that space doing sex ed. I met her and I slid into her DMs on Twitter because of a bikini photo she posted. The gayest stuff. Without thinking it was gay, my mind boggles. I slid into her DMs and I said, can I flirt with you? And she said yes. And so we proceeded to sext for like 4 or 5 months. And then she ends up saying that she's coming to a sexuality conference in Toronto, where I live in Canada. So we get an Airbnb together. And I remember the night before we were going to meet up, literally like sitting in like this room at my parents' place, shaking. Like my whole body is trembling and I can't stop it. I don't understand why. I remember my sister walking by and being like, you good, bro? And I'm like, I don't know. And I go on to the LGBT Youth Line, which is an amazing organization in Ontario. And I chat with this lovely volunteer about, I'm feeling really nervous. I don't really know what's going on. They're very supportive and comforting. And I end up going and meeting up with this woman. And she's So lovely. By the way, she's from Finland. She comes all the way from Finland to Canada for this tech conference. She's so lovely. She's a fellow Scorpio. We have a really amazing, beautiful weekend. We also have sex in the Airbnb. It's the first time anybody ever makes me come. After, literally years of thinking I was broken, I'm like, oh, well, okay, that was like easier than it has ever been in my life, and I ever thought it could be. Huh, interesting. And by the end of the weekend, this beautiful, romantic, like we go all around Toronto, we're learning about each other. And the whole time I'm like, straight. Because again, I've convinced myself that like women are just inherently more sexually fluid, and the sexual attraction that I'm having isn't real queerness, and it like doesn't count, which is so like hard and messed up to think about. So it isn't until the final ending keynote that I feel this like pit in the base of my stomach. And I realize that it's romantic feelings. I'm going to really miss her when she goes back to Finland. And in that moment, I can no longer deny that I am queer. So we have this tearful goodbye by like a subway stop in Toronto. And I go home, and my mom and sister are sitting at the table, and they ask me, did anything interesting happen at your conference? And that is how I come out to them. I say, yeah, there's this girl. And I come out on YouTube about a week later. But yeah, I really, at that moment, was dealing with so much compet that even after all of this queer stuff that I'd done throughout my whole life, was like, okay, I know there's this one girl, and I can no longer deny that. And okay, I'm starting to open the door to maybe that means that there could be other women and non-binary people that I could also be interested in. And so I identified as bisexual because I didn't really question that I was into men because I'd been in relationships with men. It was fine. So I went out and about identifying as bisexual for about 5 years, which was really beautiful. I, in many ways, feel very grateful to have started my queer journey within the bi community because I think that bi people can have really radical frameworks and thinking about queerness in a way that I'm really glad to have learned from, like Gab Alexa, Gabby, Sky, Femme Meow, really like so many members of the like bi Instagram community. I felt very bolstered and seen by and supported by in those moments. I started reading all the queer books that I could read. I started making these like lists of queer movies to watch. I legitimately like got back into reading as an adult again. It's such a big part of my life now. But as the course of these 5 years went by, I started thinking like, I really haven't felt the desire to date men again. I don't really feel like I'm missing out. I haven't really found any like men on the street or in the world that I'm into. Huh, that's interesting. That's an interesting piece of information for me to think about. And I eventually started being like, I like really only want to date women and non-binary people and queer people. And the, albeit extremely chaotic dating experiences I've had so far with queer people have in many ways been more attraction, more emotional connection, more depth. Like it felt right in this way that dating men never felt. And so I started talking to my lesbian friends about maybe I'm a lesbian. Maybe this is the label that actually describes my experience and who I am. And they were very affirming, and they started using that label for me. And I eventually came to the realization that I didn't need to hinge my identity and the label that I was using based on some hypothetical man that might never appear in my life. It's like fantastical man of like, oh, maybe one day I'll be interested in men again and I'll like them, which may be true, but I and my identity and who I am is not defined by men, let alone a male that doesn't even exist yet. So I came out as a lesbian in 2021 and feel even more affirmed and joyful and like lit up by the identity today. And at that time and throughout that lesbian journey, being so positively influenced by lesbian TikTok, that shred of positive representation of lesbians. As so many of us grew up with, the only representation of lesbians were really lesbians as a joke, lesbians getting killed in TV shows. There really wasn't, for me, this idea of like, you can live a normal, happy, beautiful life and be fulfilled as a lesbian. So getting to see snippets of that over the pandemic and also being separated from having to interact with men on a daily basis really allowed me space to be like, okay, who am I outside of this expectation to perform and be seen and perceived by men? And not only did that allow me to, realize I was a lesbian, it also allowed me to put the pieces together about being non-binary. That when I released myself of the pressure to perform heterosexuality, I also released myself from the pressure to perform womanhood. That throughout my life, I never really felt like a woman. And I think as somebody who is gendered so strongly, specifically for various reasons, it was really hard for me to understand that I was a gender. But connecting with lesbianism and seeing other non-binary lesbians and just seeing how lesbians have such a unique connection and experience of womanhood, history of womanhood. Lesbians got funky gender stuff. And I was like, me too. I also have funky gender stuff. That kind of got me to where I came out, both as non-binary and a lesbian in 2021. So from all of that good stuff, where am I at today? Today, I still identify as non-binary and a lesbian. I also identify as queer. Ooh, I love the label queer for a lot of reasons. I love that it is a political identity and also a verb to queer. Like, I want to examine the ways that gender roles have been enforced upon me in my life and to fuck with them and to play around with them, to play around with gender, to act in solidarity of other queer and trans people, to act in support of liberation and queer rights in all areas of my life. So for that reason, queer is important to me. I also really love that queer is explicitly trans inclusive as an identity. Lesbian is also a trans inclusive identity. There are literally trans lesbians, non-binary lesbians. Lesbian is a trans inclusive identity, period. And I really love, putting that extra cherry on top to be like, I'm a lesbian and queer. That feels very lovely to me. Other things about where I'm at in my queer journey right now, I am in my first proper queer relationship, which is incredibly beautiful and exciting. My girlfriend's also a late bloomer lesbian, which has been very beautiful to find that connection and like shared experience in that way and really feel deeply seen on our shared journeys. They use she and they pronouns. If you're going to tell them how awesome they are in the comments. But yeah, that has been a really beautiful experience so far. And I think both of us, and I mean, I'll speak for myself, the process of unlearning compulsory heterosexuality or compet even continues in a relationship once you have that safe container. There continue to be things to come up. You're like, whoa, my gosh, I didn't think about that. So much of my queer journey, as you've heard, has been so much solo exploration and really my own self, and whether that was in community or friendships or through different media or books or people online. It's been really beautiful to have like romance be part of that queer journey. So that is where I'm at on my queer journey today. So I'm very excited to keep sharing more of my personal storytelling as well as different frameworks and different tools and different resources and just be a sweet little affirmative queer joy voice in your head throughout these weird times. With that being said, let's move on to one of my favorite segments on the podcast, which is what I'm loving right now. Or share with you favorite book that I'm reading right now, what I'm listening to, what I'm cooking as a plant-based-ish mostly person, and some creators that I'm loving doing great stuff in the queer world. Kicking off with what I'm reading, one of my favorite fiction books I've read so far this year is called Dead in the Frame, which is the fifth in a series of cozy-ish historical mystery books with a bisexual main character set in New York in the 1940s. Follows Will Parker, who is a ex-circus performer, as she assists the greatest detective in New York City, Lillian Pentecost, as she solves mysteries, dates and smooches people of various genders. It's just really cool. Lillian Pentecost is the main detective, and she has MS, so there's some good old chronic illness disability rep. And in this book, there's some more trans rep, polyamory rep. I would argue autistic, neurodivergent rep. I don't know whether the author specifically said that this character is autistic, but she's a little sweetie, and that's my headcanon. So yeah, would highly recommend Dead in the Frame and the whole Parker and Pentecost mystery series. Next up is what I'm listening to, and I recently discovered Ravina's album of 2014, the deluxe edition of Where Butterflies Go in the Rain, and it is so dreamy, bubbly, like gentle, hot, sweet. I don't know if you want additions to your sapphic sex playlist, but I would add that right on there. In terms of what I'm cooking, I have been obsessed with plant-based RD, aka Catherine, who makes a lot of really cool, you know, herbaceous, legume forward. That makes it not sound super delicious. It is very delicious. Um, like Latinx plant-based food, and it's super delicious. I got my girlfriend her cookbook for Christmas, and I'm also following on all the socials and getting right into it. Last up, creators I'm obsessed with. My wonderful friend Ellen, who has been a part of my queer journey from, the baby bye days. Ellen Jones released her incredibly impactful and incredibly timely book, Outrage, which is all about the fight for queer rights, where we stand now, where we've been, where we need to go. I would highly recommend that you pick up this battle cry of a book to learn more. It's a great book for allies and people who want to, learn more as queer people ourselves. In future eps, we're going to be doing an Ask Eva segment, so please feel free to submit your questions to the anonymous question box here. You can have it anonymous, or you can have your name if you want me to shout out your name. I am really excited to dive into all of your questions about late bloomer identity, queerness, book recs, fun stuff, sex, intimacy, dating, all that good stuff. But without further ado, thank you so much for being here for the first inaugural episode of the Out in Bloom podcast. I'm incredibly grateful that you are here and excited that you're here. Extra big smooches to people who are coming on YouTube at youtube.com/whatsmybodydoing. I love that. But please subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, on YouTube. There'll be new episodes every week about the late bloomer journey, compet, second adolescence, books, queer fashion, all that good stuff. If you want more queer community and solidarity, advice, book recs, making queer friends, please feel free to join the Late Bloomers Support Club. You can join the membership at patreon.com/Late Bloomers Support Club. As well, if you would like to bring queer and trans sex ed to your university, college, I would love to come on down. I can talk about pleasure anatomy, consent, communication, healthy relationships. So please feel free to check out the link in the show notes for more information about that. As well, you can book me for one-on-one coaching and support so we can dive into tailored resources and really dive deep into your own personal challenges, tackle them, and get you living your most beautiful queer life. You can find that at evabloom.ca/3pack or in the show notes. Lastly, please share this podcast with a friend who is maybe also on their late bloomer journey or wanting a little bit of queer joy and affirmation into their week. But until then, stay curious, keep blooming, and I'll see you in the next episode.